Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really unpacking something big. It's not just about tech. We're talking global power, economics, national security, all wrapped up in the intense fight over advanced semiconductors. You've sent us some fantastic sources for this deep dive. Really lays out the history and what's at stake right now. So our mission today, understand why these tiny little chips are causing such a huge global competition. We'll look at some parallels to the past and explore the big moves the U.S. and China are making.
Yeah, and what's really striking is how history seems to be, rhyming here. But there are some crucial new factors this time. We need to ask, can the U.S. actually pull off what it did before? Or is China's whole approach just going to lead somewhere completely different?
Okay, so let's start with that history lesson. Our sources point back to the late 1980s. Japan, back then, they weren't just making great Walkmans or cars. They were a powerhouse in the actual core components. Semiconductors, I mean, Japan dominated. They had, what, 51% of the global market share?
51%, yeah, dominant.
Yeah.
And the U.S. was lagging behind at 39%.
Right.
So that immediately raised a huge red flag for the U.S., right?
Yeah.
On its whole competitive edge.
Exactly. So what did they do? Well, they formed the Semitech Agreement. It was basically a consortium, industry and government working together, aimed at fixing manufacturing problems and getting the U.S. back in the game.
And the funding, interestingly, came from the Department of Defense.
Hmm.
Through DARPA, the Pentagon's R&D arm that comes up with all sorts of breakthrough tech.
Yeah, DARPA's fingerprints are on a lot of innovation. They put in about $500 million over 5 years. A lot of money back then.
A serious investment. And it wasn't just the cash, I think. It showed the power of that kind of focused collaboration. It proved that, a country can claw back technological ground if it gets serious.
And it worked, at least partially, maybe significantly, within about 10 years. By the mid-90s, the U.S. had pretty much regained control.
And Japan's share?
Plummeted, down to just 5.5%. Now, okay, other things were going on in the economy too, but Semitech definitely played a big role in that shift. So fast forward to today,
Right.
and it's China standing up to the U.S. in the exact same field. And the U.S., well, they're pulling out a similar playbook, aren't they? Like the CHPS Act.
Absolutely. And you have
Yeah.
to see the semiconductor fight in the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. Really sees itself in this major competition with China across everything.
Yeah.
Economic, political, diplomatic, tech, military, the whole 1 yards.
And the goal for the U.S. is?
Well, the sources suggest the aim is to preserve its unipolar dominance, basically stay the world's single leading power, setting the agenda.
Yeah.
And you see this competition playing out everywhere. China's Belt and Road versus U.S. alternatives.
Yeah.
The space race kicking off again.
Right, China's moon missions, U.S. heading back too.
Trade wars, trying to pull Europe closer to the U.S. side. China lending money to developing nations, competing with the World Bank and IMF, and crucially, this huge Chinese military buildup, especially the Navy. They're aiming for a world-class military, all branches. And President Xi himself has said technology is absolutely key to that military goal.
And here's the direct link back to chips, right? That cutting-edge military tech our sources talk about. It would absolutely rely on the most advanced semiconductors. So it makes sense the U.S. isn't just going to, hand over the keys to its tech lead.
Which brings us to the core question. What exactly has China done to build up its chip industry? And how specifically is the U.S. trying to stop them?
Well, China's serious push really started maybe 15 years ago, and they've been smart about it. First, talent. They've aggressively recruited foreign experts. Lots of Americans from Silicon Valley, actually. Many ended up in leadership roles in Chinese chip companies.
Yeah, I saw that Wall Street Journal report. Something like 43 senior execs in 16 top Chinese firms are U.S. citizens.
That's the number. So recruiting talent, that's one. Two, they've been building up their own companies. They're domestic champions like YMTC and...
Yes. Mick. There was that news, or maybe rumor, about them hitting 7-nanometer tech.
Exactly. It's technically unconfirmed by SMIC itself, but if true, that's a huge leap. Remember, smaller nanometers mean more powerful chips. 7-nanometer would be a major step, maybe even ahead of where Intel's struggled with 10 nanometers recently, though still behind the absolute leaders like TSMC and Samsung.
Still, a big jump if confirmed.
And third, money. Just massive R&D investment. China's annual R&D spending is nearly level with the U.S. now, around $600 billion a year.
So, huge investments, strategic hiring, backing local companies, but they still face some serious roadblocks, right? Especially getting the key equipment.
That's where the U.S. countermoves really bite. The big one is lithography machines, the really advanced ones. China basically can't buy them from the Dutch company ASML.
Which has a total monopoly on that extreme ultraviolet EUV lithography.
Yeah.
You need it for the most advanced chips.
Precisely. And ASML isn't selling them to China because of U.S. restrictions. That's a major choke point.
Mhm.
Then you have the CHPS Act itself. It says if you take U.S. government money, you can't expand your advanced chip making in China.
Ties their hands a bit.
And then, more recently, the Biden administration added even tighter controls, restricting exports of certain chips, yes, but also the manufacturing equipment and the design software. And crucially, this is a big one, preventing U.S. talent citizens, green card holders, even U.S. companies from helping China's chip industry.
So cutting off equipment, funding, software, and expertise. That's pretty comprehensive.
It really is. Which leads to an interesting thought. Taiwan. If China were to, invade Taiwan, wouldn't they just grab TSMC, get all those advanced factories, the fabs? Or our sources look right at this, and it's complicated.
Yeah, it's really not as simple as just walking in and taking over.
Yeah.
The chairman of TSMC himself has said pretty directly that if Taiwan were invaded, those advanced factories would become unoperable.
Unoperable. Sounds like they'd be sabotaged or destroyed.
That's the implication. And beyond that, Taiwan's own National Security Bureau chief made another key point. He said even if China did somehow take control of the physical buildings and machines, the factories would be basically useless.
Useless. Why?
Because TSMC isn't just machines in a building. It's incredibly integrated into a global supply chain. Think specialized chemicals, gases, software updates, maintenance from international partners. It's this intricate global network. The value isn't just the hardware, it's the whole process and the connections.
Ah, okay. So the U.S. and allies could still essentially brick the factories remotely by cutting off that supply chain.
That seems to be the idea.
Yeah.
It means the U.S. still holds significant leverage. China's path to mastering this stuff, even under a drastic scenario like that, is still really, really long.
Okay, so the U.S. has put up some serious roadblocks. Does China just take it, like Japan maybe had to in the 80s? Our sources suggest China has some pretty powerful ways to push back that Japan just didn't have.
And that's the critical difference, isn't it? How could China actually retaliate given its unique position today?
Well, first off, market power. Sheer market power. China buys something like 60 to 65% of all semiconductors sold globally.
Wow, that's huge.
It's about $400 billion a year in purchases. And since the U.S. still controls, 80% of chip design rights, U.S. companies and their partners could lose massive amounts of money if China decides to stop buying.
Or even just restrict purchases from specific companies.
Exactly. We're already seeing warnings. Applied Materials, Lam Research, big equipment makers, they're warning about revenue hits from the new U.S. export rules. Micron could see sales drop by maybe $2.5 billion. NVIDIA, maybe $400 million. Intel, potentially $21 billion in China sales are at risk. That's out of $79 billion total last year. China could just target specific firms like Qualcomm or Micron. They could potentially cut their revenues in half.
So hitting them where it hurts, the bottom line. That's one major lever.
And there's another big one, rare earth elements. China could restrict exports of these minerals, and they are absolutely vital for making semiconductors and lots of other tech.
And China dominates rare earths, right?
Yeah. In 2021, they supplied about 60% of the world's raw rare earth needs. But here's the thing. Even for the other 40% mined elsewhere, a lot of it still has to go to China for the complex processing needed to make it usable.
So they control not just the mining, but a huge chunk of the processing too. Effective control over much more than 60%.
That's the idea. So being able to turn off that tap, that could seriously disrupt semiconductor manufacturing in the U.S. and allied countries. It's a potent counterpunch.
So when you put it all together, the key difference this time, compared to the U.S. versus Japan in the 80s, it's China's massive economy, its huge domestic market pulling in imports, and this stranglehold on rare earths.
Exactly. Those are cards Japan just didn't hold back then. So it really seems like pushing back against China in this tech race. It's not going to be as simple or maybe as successful as it was with Japan. This has been a deep dive into the incredibly high-stakes world of semiconductors and global power. We hope you feel a bit more informed, maybe better equipped to understand the complexities of this rivalry as it unfolds.
And maybe it leaves you with this thought to chew on. How might this really intense technological competition, how could it reshape global alliances, trade patterns, maybe even military postures in the years ahead, way beyond just the tech industry itself?
Something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us. Until next time.